Well, hello everybody. This is Nathan Ott, Chief Polisher here at the GC Index, and we have another one of our exciting GC Index series podcasts. I'm joined today by Lee Lam. Lee Lam is one of our GCologists from our GCologist community, but has spent all of her career helping organisations change the way they work, and has doing that now through her own consultancy, Lee Lam Consultancy. You can find her at leelam.co.uk. And today's webinar is called Ditch the CV. It's something that Lee is very passionate about. It's getting a lot of traction within organisations around how they can look at different ways of selecting and identifying candidates. So today's webinar is very much to explore a bit more of that with Lee. Many of you were already on the Twitter chat from last week, which had a lot of excitement, so we'll bring some of that into this session. So maybe we should start really by asking you, Lee, just tell us what is Ditch the CV? It's really, well, so I've struggled a little bit to work out whether it's a program or a mission, right? Because when I think about it, it feels more encompassing than just working with organisations to fix a recruitment process. I fundamentally believe that people need to be treated as people within an organisation. Yeah. And so this year I was looking at how can I make that happen. And I talked to people around diversity or bringing young people into organisations. And all of it, we're trying to put in people to a system, a recruitment process that's currently there, that is initiated by the CV. What you realise when you take a step back is that actually the current process doesn't work for anyone. Yeah. So you're trying to get other people into a process that doesn't even work for the people it's supposed to work for. Yeah. So being disruptive, I'm like, right, blank page. What if the CV wasn't there? Right. And so that's kind of developed the people management strategy of, if we stop using the CV as a tool of selection, which actually everybody knows doesn't really work. Right. What then? Yeah. And some of the discussions I've had, a lot of people agree with that first bit. Where they get nervous is about what else. Right. So my programs are designed to help organisations with the what else. What can I use if I don't use CVs? So we've all written a CV, no doubt, right? Yeah. We've all used a CV. As a consultant, you put together a bio or a CV, right? So why? But we hear so much that the CV in its current form just does not sell the future body of work, right? Yeah. We've seen that. So, but why do you think people are so reliant on a CV today? And what do they get out of a CV? Which makes it difficult for them to move to something else? I think the power of the status quo. Yeah. You know, the CVs have been around for decades, centuries even. And really, the concept of a CV is kind of based on the Industrial Revolution production line mentality. Right. So I've got this big machine of an organisation. If one of the nuts or the widgets breaks or resigns, I need an exact fit to go in its place to keep the machine working. There's no point me finding out that it doesn't fit because the machine won't work. Yeah. Now, the problem with that is that's not how companies grow anymore, because effectively that's like having a steam engine and you just keep replacing the parts of a steam engine. Right. If we start looking at the rate of change that we have to now deal with, companies have to be able to evolve quicker. And you're not going to evolve by having the same of everything that you've had before. Yeah, but surely if I'm recruiting for a position, I'll need the CV is a very good way of seeing someone's experience and skills. Are you suggesting that we sort of stop looking at that? I guess my question would be, if you ask hiring managers, when you see someone's CV, do you believe it? Do you think, how much of this is embellished? How much do I actually need? Because if you've got a particular job and you know exactly what you need that person to be doing,
but you've got somebody who can do 10 other things based on their CV. It's irrelevant. We ask for the information to be collected, but we're not actually using it, and more importantly, we're not trusting it. So large organisations now will almost always use a screening process. So you give them the CV. In the interview, you're questioned as to whether the CV is accurate. Absolutely. And then after you've been brought on, they check you again. It doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't make you as a candidate feel that you've been selected for the value that you can offer.
I mean, I get it. I mean, I get this. We've worked in recruitment for a number of years, working with organisations, and we get loads of CVs, right? And at interview, particularly when you're interviewing a number of people from the same company, they've all claimed to do exactly the same thing on that CV. And they've all won this deal, or they've all led this program. So I've always had a view that the CV is just a sales document, so I've got to try and actually test how bad it is. So I don't think you're going to get any challenge with that, really. But it still is seen to serve a purpose. But if we don't use the CV and we do ditch the CV, because that's kind of, just to be clear, that's your nirvana. We're not saying everyone just stop CVs today.
Right? No, exactly.
But that's kind of the end game, where we do finally evolve to something completely different without the CV. But what might that look like? What might a world without a CV look like? What's the people are going to ask? What's the other option?
The other options are again stripping away at how you look for and recruit people. So right now, the recruitment process allows you to get a massive CV database of 25,000 CVs. You can't go through all 25,000. So you search for keywords, and eventually you're still not finding the right people. But it's all based on having it's a volume issue, right? There's so many people out there. How do you whittle it down? But you can do other options. There are other ways of identifying people and of letting them apply. So a lot of companies use an application form. The application form can be tailored to what that particular role is for. In my nirvana, I'm talking about teams who are constructed and organisations that are designed in order to, with the fundamental premise that everybody is picked for a role that plays to their strengths and how they can best contribute. So if that's in place, a CV actually isn't worth doing anyway, because you might have a team who have a particular deliverable. That's why that team exists. Through assessing what the rest of the team contributes, you know that you have a gap. And that gap is actually really specific now, because you know exactly what that team has to deliver and who's already there and what they can deliver. So you can be really specific. A CV is not going to be able to be that specific. So one of the options is to have something more like a personal profile, which would incorporate how you approach different scenarios. How do you feel that you would contribute to a company? And really, when you are sitting in an interview, what you want to be, you want the questions to be quite blunt. And why should we hire you? And we don't ask that question, and we don't give anybody an opportunity to ask that. So a personal profile can definitely help that, shape that view of you as a contributor rather than as a set of keywords. Now, you would use maybe some form of psychometric testing, or with the GC index. Obviously, that's, for me, the GC index is easier because the vocab is very quick to pick up. And so if I'm a candidate and I know that I'm an implementer, I know exactly that the kind of jobs that I should go for. Whereas some of the other psychometric testing, there's so much interpretation wrapped around it, it's really difficult to make it useful. So something like the GC index profile would be a brilliant addition to that personal profile, to say, skills and knowledge can be learned. Your natural strengths and your natural proclivities can't.
Yeah.
Or they can be developed, but they're not natural then, they're developed.
Yeah.
So you can put together a view of yourself that is a better indicator, particularly for the hiring manager, of who they will be getting on board.
Yeah, I mean certainly, as you know, we're using the GCologist for a number of organisations and recruiters using it as a point of differentiation. Yeah. So we know we need these skills, we need this experience, you know, these values. That's what. But actually, what impacts do we want from this role? What contribution do we want from this role? What can this person do? What energy is this person going to bring to the business? So certainly, I see that GC's been very additive and then giving a different frame, a different view of what different talent can bring to the business. Is this not making it perversely harder for the candidate?
Well, that's one of the...
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and this is why I struggle between programme and mission, because, you know, we've been playing this game for a long time, and people have quite a good handle on this game. Yeah,
exactly. So if I'm a candidate, right, I want to, you work with some of the biggest companies in the world, the biggest banks in the world. If I wanted to get into your bank, I knew exactly how I could tweak that CV, to make sure that it got me in, because so therefore it's easy for me. And then if I want to apply to another bank, it's pretty much the same CV, right? So I haven't got to do another. Whereas if I don't have that CV, I've got to do an application form, and another application form, and another profile. Yeah. For the laziness in me, or a laziness of the candidate, you're just not making it tougher for us.
No, and I'll tell you why.
Okay, right.
I tell you why, because in those larger organisations, they will have preferred supplier lists for your recruiters.
Right.
So at best, you have, say, 3 or 4 CVs that can be given in to the hiring manager to then assess who comes in for interview. On that basis, you having the best CV in the world does not guarantee that you will get on that list. How? Because it's playing the game. You may have the right keywords, you might have the right access to the right agents, but unless you have actually, and what I found when I was in a COO and as a hiring manager, the agent would phone me up and say, I've got 3 people who I think you should meet because I've met them, and ultimately agents want their commission, right? So they're putting people in front who they've already met, who they know quite well, they know they'll perform well in an interview, and they're pretty sure that they'll get them their commission, right? None of that is based on the CV. It's based on the personal relationship you build up with the agent. And this is, again, we create an expectation that the CV is doing something useful. Yeah. And it's not, because it's not useful, because we can't 100% trust what's in it. There are other methods. And you look at referrals, there's far more referrals into companies than people showing up with the best CV in the world. Yeah. You still got to get that in front of the right person.
Yeah, and there's a number of things. If you talk about, there's a number of internal recruiters certainly that will be interested in this, because what you tend to see is, you hear from them, is that their hiring managers just measure their, I suppose, the value they bring by a number of CVs. Just get me, I've only seen 5 CVs for this. I need another 5 before I can base a decision. And the internal recruiters are putting their hair out, going, Jesus, how many more CVs do you want to see? So I think certainly getting rid of that metric will certainly be helpful for some of the sort of internal recruiters.
But getting rid of the expectation that it works, that's the sort of
getting rid of the expectation that it works. Yeah, I think that's
because if I've worked, part of what I do with my consultancy is coaching, and I've done a number of kind of outplacement coaching assignments, and people who are in that position where they need another job will go onto every online web job board there is and download their CV, and then they'll say, oh, I've applied for 20 jobs online. And I know, because I've seen the other side of that the chances of an internal recruiter sitting there and going through the 10,000 people who did the same thing are minimal. They'll pick the top 20 and they'll go, if those 20 don't amount to what we want, we'll go for the next 20. If you happen to be number 21, you're not visible, but the job boards create the impression that you've applied for something, and you haven't. And then you don't hear back from them, and you feel like there's something wrong with you.
It's a deeper problem, isn't it?
Definitely.
Hence the mission. I know we've got one client, and they with the using GCN as recruitment, because they said, look, we get 100,000 applicants a year. We screen out 90% before, and purely on CV and I'm sure we're missing creativity. And that's why we're not bringing any creativity into the business, because we're screening out through just with this CV process.
Absolutely.
So certainly it's popped into my mind actually. So that's
And if you look at, a lot of companies realise that, well, we call it, the millennial problem, which I see as, it's not a millennial problem. It's a people management problem.
I think that's another webinar.
Completely. But we're trying to get young people into organisations because we know that they are more innovative and more creative. The very fact they don't have the experience gives them the ability to question what everybody else just takes as gospel. But if you use the CV, they'll never get through. No,
because they won't question received wisdom, because they'll have to just play the game and therefore adhere to received wisdom.
Exactly. Now, when I was at university, I remember, Freshers' Week, everyone running around, joining every possible club there was, mountaineering, lacrosse, field hockey, whatever. Did they really want to? Maybe. A lot of it was because without experience, you had to show growth. And so you could say that you had these amazing hobbies and interests. And even university application forms do the same thing. They want to see this well-rounded person. So it was crazy. I was looking, going, do I want to do mountain climbing? And I didn't. I was a complete bookworm. That's what I wanted to do. But there was definitely pressure there. And then we come out into this world where half the agents will take hobbies and interests off the CV. They'll say, oh, completely irrelevant, don't want it. Where's your work experience? Well, they don't have any, but actually that's a benefit, not a problem. But we put all of that into graduate programs and apprenticeship programs, which have a limited capacity to deal with the amount of young talent that's out there.
No, I agree. And I think that the most sort of powerful point you say is that people don't believe the CV. I mean, that's it. So that we go through all of this. We get thousands of them, and actually people just look at it. You can get off a LinkedIn profile, right? So you're saying basically replace the LinkedIn profile. This gives you all that potentially could do. Just give you all the facts that the CV gives you. Fine. Let's actually use the recruitment process or the talent development process to focus on these other areas. And let's be clear.
This is already happening, but in more senior engagements. So you reach a certain seniority in an organisation, you don't have to give a CV to anyone apart from HR, because your reputation gets known, and somebody who knows somebody phones you and says, oh, there's this role coming up. And actually the CV is only brought in because the process demands it. But the decision's been made. So if we're not using it, it's creating a block that actually, when you then peek behind it, doesn't need to be there.
And if you're still using it as senior, therefore it's going to permeate downwards, and so you're never going to change the problem. Right, we've got about sort of 10 minutes left. I know we've had some questions. I know Emma's been looking at the questions, but I know I've had quite a few questions from South Africa, actually. I know we've got a number of, this is quite important. So I'm going to pick a couple of these off. This is interesting. So they've asked two questions here. Why is a traditional CV could be ineffective? I think we've sort of covered that. This is more interesting. Why is it detrimental to achieving employee engagement?
It goes back to expectation. Right. So in a large organisation, certainly the ones I've worked for, the job needs to be filled usually pretty quickly. So they tell you to raise a job spec. You haven't got time, so you nick one that you used earlier. Doesn't really apply to what you want that person to do, but you know it worked before, so you put it through. So from the very beginning, you're setting the expectation that the job spec tells them what they will be doing.
Yeah.
You interview on the same basis, and interviews can actually be quite structured now because of competency-based interviews, and from a risk perspective, asking everybody exactly the same questions in the same way, building a perceived fairness. Day one of the job, the line manager goes, actually, that's not what we wanted you for at all. We want you for this.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why people aren't engaged.
Yeah.
Now, with a personal profile and with my program, I'm flipping that completely.
Right.
So I'm saying the job spec is what do you need this person to achieve in the first 3 to 6 months of their role.
Yeah.
So they know before they've even applied for it what is going to be expected of them.
Yeah.
You interview on that basis.
Yeah.
So they come in day one, it's like, right, where do I start? And it's aligned. So there isn't that recalibration of, oh, I thought I would be doing this job, but actually I'm doing this.
Yeah, no, we found that very powerful with the GC Index actually, because you start talking about impact and contribution. You get the brief from the hiring manager. All right, we get the skills, we get the experience, we know you need a Java developer for 10. We get that. That's table stakes. What do you want to come and do? Yeah, what impact do you want them to make? Have they got to get some stuff done? Have they got to like join everything together? Have they got to become sort of what have they got to do? What impact do you want them to make? Yeah. Therefore, that then moves into your interview process, which then moves into your onboarding. So everyone's aware of the impact that Java developer has to then go and make over 3 to 6 months. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can see that.
And then if you take employee engagement further, and you have those team morale issues, usually they're around people who, individuals who, for whatever reason, are not working to their strengths and not being given adequate support to do so. So you start the performance management process for them, at which point you have to tell them the job that you thought that they should be doing. And it's a really long process. Yeah. It's 6 to 9 months. It's stressful for the line manager. It's stressful for the person.
It's detrimental to business effectiveness for everyone. Yeah.
Completely. Yeah. So, and again, even if that's not you going through the process, if that's happening to your team, are you going to be as engaged?
Yeah. I mean, as we certainly see that the individual of our employee engagement is if that individual understands their impact, they're good at it, and and it's being rewarded and recognised, then they're going to be engaged. They're going to feel potent, feel masterful, and it takes engagement to another level.
Yeah, exactly.
We do add some more questions to the question box. I do have quite a few coming through from South Africa, so clearly this is an important point from our South African audience. But if you have a question, do pop it into the box. There's one more from South Africa, then there's one from Ruth, I see. So let me, how does ditching the CV, again South Africa, how does ditching the CV create a more diverse workplace?
This is maybe not so obvious, but if you stop looking at CV, so we talk about unconscious bias in the D&I space quite a lot. And unconscious bias comes from looking at something and be able to perceive a particular gender or race or whatever, and therefore making a decision based on that. Now, because of that little, you've got to have done the job to get the job. If you've got somebody with a CV that's got lots of experience on it, it's probably a man, and it's probably a white man. Yeah. Right? If you see a CV come in and there's some gaps, or could that be, might that be a woman who's had to take childcare off? So, and that's really subtle. That's really difficult. With a personal profile and with the GC Index, we know it's not gender specific. You can't guess what gender or diverse group they are a member of, because it's based on them as a person and nothing to do with their culture or anything. Yeah. So, or any cultural norms. So it allows you to create more of a blind recruitment process. Yeah. So you strip away the unconscious bias because they cannot tell who they were. And one of the tests I do with the teams that I work through this with is look at the CVs that you would have picked get them to do the GC index.
Mm-hmm.
Get some of the people who they wouldn't have picked to do the GC index, and see how many actually match up.
Yeah.
Because I know in my own case, my career, the points of frustration were when it was assumed that as a woman, I would be really good at implementing, because, you know, women are good at multitasking, aren't they? And they like getting stuff done.
Very diligent. And,
exactly. I'm not implementer at all. And as soon as I read my profile and saw that, I realised that's what it was. And then I could see, actually, that's why I was getting frustrated in those situations.
Yes.
So from a company's perspective, it's another method that you can use that allows you to know for sure that you're making the selection on the right principles. And from the candidate's perspective, it gives them a shot when they didn't think they had one.
Yes, it brings that confidence. And, for sure. Emma, we've got a couple of questions. I think there's one from Ruth. I can't see it. Are you able to read it out for us?
Yes, absolutely. Ruth says, she asked quite early on, and I think you covered some of this, but is the alternative to the CV buying into a software system which relies on good data and a strong manager, or is it aimed more at recruiters?
Good question.
It can be, obviously, if the option that you use to get rid of the CV includes the use of things like the GC index, then there's a certain amount of software that comes with that. I wouldn't say it's a given though. The way that I've designed the program is you take it as far and as fast as you want to. So if you want to work on a technology solution that allows you to deal with it, so for example, a replacement to, if you don't have a CV database, what would you use? That's there, but from my perspective, I want to make sure that the drivers are people focused. So this isn't change the program, change the software and you solve the problem. This is a cultural change, and there may be some software that helps you support that change, but ultimately the conversation has to start way before that, in the process of how do we want to find the right people for our business.
Okay, good. I hope that answers your question, Ruth. If you want to explore that further, then we'll give you Lee's details. I've got time for one more question, which I've got here. So how does switching the focus from past experience to future contribution solve the problems that you've mentioned during this webinar? So
it opens doors, effectively. If we go back to young people, this is a way of them being able to explain what they are capable of, and it doesn't rely on them having done it before.
Right.
Yeah, and it's that concept really. With women, we have this crazy scenario where you have to have years of experience on your CV, but take 6 months off to have a child, and all of a sudden your experience isn't relevant or recent, and all of that doesn't matter.
And the CV just compounds that, right?
Absolutely.
Because, basically what you're
saying.
It
makes it 10 times worse. If you change that, it gives those women another way of identifying what they are capable of contributing. Now that may be actually quite different because they've now got children, but it won't make it any less valuable. It's just about changing the conversation so that they can actually start being participating in the conversation, rather than what happens at the moment, which is there's no entry point for them that works.
Okay, we're just going to have to wrap up now. There's another 3 or 4 questions that have come through. So obviously we're going to finish this webinar. So if they want to get more involved with or understand more about this, Lee, obviously we know you're sort of using the GC index as part of this program, but the program is more than the GC index. How can they get hold of you? How can people talk to you? Where can we find out more information? That kind of stuff, please.
Well, you can email me at info@ditch-the-cv.com.
So someone's already taken. Sorry,
I did try.
Could you give that to us again?
Via Twitter at Lee Lam Consult. I think Facebook's also at Lee Lam Consult. And the website is www.ditch-the-cv.com. ditch the CV with the hyphens.com.
Excellent. Well, that's great. Well, we're very excited about this mission, and the GC Index is part of this, and just really changing the talent landscape, how we view talent. Talk about diversity of impact and that. So ditch CV, yeah, really. So thanks for your time.
No problem.
And we'll speak soon. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for your questions, and see you on the next one. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.